Dear colleagues, my name is Petar Kehayov and I'm the professor of Finnic languages at the University of Tartu. 2 years ago, the REMODUS partnership organized a course on language attrition, and now me and my colleagues, we have prepared a couple of short videos just to advertise the course or the materials which we prepared during the course, and at the same time to recapitulate some of the main topics or issues we discussed during the course on language attrition. And I had the honor to be the first lecturer to read the first 2 lectures. And now I'm sitting in my room here in Tartu, and it's 30 degrees outside. It's a hot summer, and I was trying to recollect what was I talking about 2 years ago in this introductory lecture. And I remembered that I began with just presenting a list of different expressions or words you find in the literature on vanishing languages and communities, dying languages. So in addition to language attrition, authors speak also about language death or language shift, language obsolescence, language loss, or language decay also. And sometimes these terms are used to designate entirely different phenomena. For example, language attrition or language loss can be found in the context of neurological damage, like aphasia, but at the same time also to designate vanishing or dying languages of indigenous communities. In other cases, different terms are used to designate the same phenomenon, but to emphasize, to highlight different aspects of it. For example, when we speak about language death, we highlight the terminality of the process, and when we speak about language shift, we highlight the successive character of this process. But what's important in this case that all these are metaphors. They are not more than metaphors, because from the perspective of individual speaker, she neither loses her language, the language does not die, the language of individual speakers does not die, but also individual speakers do not shift to another language. What they do is that they optimize the expression in order to be successful in communication. So this is very important as the first point. And in my lecture and in my research in general, I have been talking about language death. I have been using this term. And more specifically, I'm interested in language death of in indigenous communities, in Uralic communities. And even more specifically, I have been interested in the structural manifestations of language death. What happens in the grammar of the last speakers of a language? Now, but what is the definition of what is language death? And there is a very simple definition. Language death is characterized by interruption of intergenerational transmission. Or put simply, this means that the language is no longer being learned as a mother tongue in the community. In this first lecture, in this introductory lecture, I also discussed different types of language death based on the speed of the process, because the speed can be different, or based on the stimuli of the process, or based on the direction of the process, whether it is top-down or bottom-up, whether it proceeds, in which direction the process of linguistic death proceeds within the society. Another important topic I began with in this introductory lecture, but also followed up in the next one, was the manifestation, the structural manifestation of language debt, which I already mentioned. So how does language debt manifest specifically in linguistic structure? And the basic manifestation of language debt is something that I call a reduction without compensation. So unlike in healthy languages, the loss of linguistic forms or the simplification of grammatical rules is not compensated elsewhere in the grammar or in the system of the language. This is something peculiar to the language debt circumstances. But you will have the opportunity to read about this in my slides, which are also available at REMODUS homepage. Now, turning back to the Uralic languages, as you know, we live in very different conditions from 2 years ago. At that time, the war of Russia against Ukraine had just begun, and we didn't know what's going to happen. We didn't know how long is this going to last. And by now we have stopped doing field work, and we know that in the near future we will not have chances to observe in real time the language death in indigenous Uralic communities of Russia. And most of these communities are in Russia, unfortunately, with the only exception of some Sami languages spoken in Fennoscandia, where we can observe the process in real time. But in the end of this short video, I would like to advertise 2 books. Both deal directly with language debt, and in this book I investigated what happens to the expressions of modality and mood in the language of the last speakers of certain Finnic varieties. And the second book, written by me and my colleague from Helsinki, Denise Kuzmin, we described isolated Karelian varieties spoken in Murmansk Oblast on Kola Peninsula, which is the northernmost Karelian variety known, and which is also vanishing. And in this sense, this book is also about language death. So if you know more about language death, please follow my slides, the slides of my introductory lecture. And if you want to know even more, then read the books which I recommended to you. So that's it, and thank you for the attention, and please watch the following videos.